Okay, so when we're talking about collections, one of the cool things in Java is the list interface and also the list iterator. The list interface allows us to basically use an interface that can point to many different types of collections, right? So we can have array lists, linked lists, etc. It's a tactic it's a design pattern in Java to pass around interfaces, not concrete implementations. That way, if I give you a list interface, the backing implementation could be an array list, could be a linked list, could be whatever you want it to be, depending on what the most efficient data structure is for the purpose that you're writing the code for. So let's take a look at this start code, and we'll take a look at the unit test so you can get started. Okay, so once you have the start code cloned from GitHub, open up the README as I have right here, and let's take a look at this. So this is obviously this video. And what we're going to look at the list iterators and the list interface. So our objectives are to use the list interface and pass it around and kind of explore how all this works. So the first task is we're going to implement my item. So let's go ahead and open that up and look at it. So if we go to app bin main my item, you can see right here, this needs to be implemented. Now you can see it doesn't implement everything, so we need to go through and implement all of the interface methods. So if we open up item, you can see that we have a get name, set name, get quantity, set quantity. So we gotta go implement the interface items the item interface in the my item class. Okay, so that's what that is referring to. And the my item, so the kind of thing we're looking at here is my item is intended to represent a item in a purchase order. Okay. In addition to implementing the interface items, we need to implement an equals, hash code, and toString. So the main thing we're looking at is the equals. The reason we're implementing hash code is just to it's just good practice. Whenever you override equals, you should always override hash code. And toString obviously we should generally override that as well because it gives a nice string representation of your object. So given the fact that hash code is outside the scope of this class, I'm just going to give it to you. So this is what your hash code should look like. This is just what is auto-generated by VS Code. So there's a lot of research on hash codes. We don't really need to go down that right now. What this is using is it's using the name property and the quantity property to generate a unique number that represents this item, this object. And that is used when you're using the hash table, hash map collections. Okay, so we have the interfaces, we have the equals, hash code toString. And finally, we need to implement the parse items. If we look over here, the parse items, right? The parse items. The parse items is what it's going to do is it's going to take an iterator, and the iterator has it's just a list. It's just a bunch of strings, and each string, every time we call next, we're going to get a new string. And each string is going to be in the format shown below. So the string will be steel 4 pounds, bolts 23 pounds, aluminum 2 units. And our job is to split that string and create a new item. For example, if we have the string steel 4 pounds, we are going to have a new item where the name will be steel and the quantity will be 4 pounds. So that's all we need to do. Now, here's the cool thing, why we're doing this. If we go to app, we can kind of see that we're using a scanner. Okay, scanner reading from system in. We're setting the delimiter to using the line separator, right? The line separator is what happens when you hit when you hit the enter key. And then we're passing, look at this, we're passing the scanner directly to our parse items. That is cool, right? Look, it's a scanner object and we're passing it right to parse items. If we open up parse items, you can see it doesn't take a scanner, it takes an iterator. Why does this work? Well, if we go back and we look at the scanner interface, okay, so we can look at the scanner interface right here. We can see, let's make this a little bit bigger. We can see that the scanner the scanner class implements all implemented interfaces. It implements the iterator. Okay, an iterator has the methods has next, next, remove, right? So it's the public interface iterator. So our class has a method named parse items. Parse items takes an interface, which is right here, and that interface is just that. It's backed by, we don't even know what it's backed by. Because look at this. We're getting a scanner, right? An app, we're passing in a scanner, and we're passing in a scanner, which in turn, inside our parse items, we're reinterpreting that as being just an iterator. So we don't care that it's actually coming from the standard system, the standard system in stream, which is really cool, really powerful. This is a good example of polymorphism. All right, so let's go look at some of the tests that we're going to write. So let's go ahead and close this. All right, and let's go look at the tests. All right, so here we are in item test, and the first thing we want to do is we want to test equals because we had to write the equals. So I'm going to create two separate items with the name foo, quantity bar, and I'm going to assert their equals. I'm going to reverse that, right? So name, I'm going to reverse them, call this not equals, and then assert that they're not equal, and this should pass, right? Then I'm going to create a null item. So I'm just going to create an item, my item, and that's my concrete implementation, assigning that to an interface. And inside that, the items should be null. So I'm going to assert that first is not equal to null item. And I actually can, if I want to get really pedantic, I can say assert not equals. And then I'll say not equal and null item. Okay. So, and that should still return, I should still pass. Okay, so that's my test equals test. Here's my test name. So here's when I implemented my item class, I had to write the getters and setters. This is just a quick testing, right? So the first thing I'm going to say is if I create a new item, name should be null. So I'm going to assert null because right, I constructed nothing. So this should just, I shouldn't have anything in name. Then I'll set the name to hello, and then I'll assert it equals hello. Then the same thing for quantity, same kind of pattern. So I'm testing name, testing quantity. Now here's the cool thing. Here's the cool part that we get with interfaces in Java. So in test parse items, I create a list interface. So list is just an interface. There's not really any meat to it. And then you notice I assign a new array list to this list because array list is a concrete type and it implements the list interface. Then I call this list raw items. I add 3 items. So I add steel, bolts, aluminum, and these are right from the examples I give you in the README: steel, bolts, aluminum. And then I call parse items, and I call right on raw items. I call right on raw items.iterator. Now here's the cool thing: this iterator is now connected to this array list right here. So this iterator and this is pointing back to this array list, which we go back to the app. Okay, when we pass in the scanner, this scanner implements the iterator interface. It's connected back to the scanner. So it's kind of cool, right? So we have parse items and we're passing in an iterator here and we're passing in an iterator here, even though the concrete objects are different. And that is cool. That is super powerful. Okay, so after parse items returns, I'm expecting index 0 to be steel, index 1 to be bolts, index 2 to be aluminum, right? So I converted basically from a list of strings to a list of items. So now I can assert index 0. So I'm using the get call of the items interface. And index 0 should be steel, 4 pounds, right? Because I split the string on a space. Index 1 should be bolts and 23 pounds because I split again on space. And I can't pronounce that. This one, it should be 2 units. So we can go through and we can actually run this and we can say, right, let's go ahead and clear, and we can go Gradle W test, and all of our tests should pass. So that's cool. So everything passes. So that means that our implementation, which I'm not going to show because right now this is the solution, the implementation is right there. And so it looks like it all passed. You're welcome to use my test. In fact, I would encourage you to use these tests, and I would encourage you to write some more on your own. So now let's go back to app, because app we should not modify. We're using a scanner. We're setting the delimiter to line separator, meaning that what the delimiter is every time you call next on the scanner, the line separator determines what that is. By default, the scanner looks for spaces. In our case, we don't want spaces because in our test, right, we're going to do our own, we want the whole line. So every time we call next, we want the whole line, not just steel. So that's why in app, we set the line delimiter to what the line separator is, which is on Windows, it's \r\n, and on Unix systems, it's \n. So \n is what gets put when you hit enter on the keyboard. So I can go ahead and just hit run. And the cool thing about this is you'll see that it looks like it's doing nothing, but right now it's waiting for input. So this is where I can actually go in and I can, copy, and I can just give it input. So I can say, give it input, and I can say, okay, there's the steel, and it's waiting for more. I'm going to give it the bolts, and then I'm going to give it the aluminum. Okay. Now here's where it could be tricky depending on what platform you're on. On Mac and Linux, you should just hit Control D. And what that does is that sends a end of, that tells the scanner that you're done. So if I hit Control D, oops, I was in the wrong one. So down here, hit Control D, and you can see that basically terminated the input stream. And you can see now I have everything parsed out. So if we go back over to the app, you can see where right here, line 17, that is where it's printing out. So I got my item, which is steel, bolt, aluminum. Everything looks good. And you noticed here that I'm just passing I, which is the item interface, to print line. This may be a little bit confusing, right? Because I'm just an item. Well, the my item parse item scanner, it is newing up the my item object. So I have the interface and the concrete object. And you notice here that when I pass it to print line automatically will call toString, and my toString inside my item is printing off this format. So, all right, so that is the project. That is hopefully it'll allow you to really demonstrate the power of the list and the iterator interface. It will allow you to show. It allows you to. It shows you just how cool it is to be able to pass different concrete implementations to a particular method, depending on what you're doing. And it's one of the most powerful things in Java. All right, so good luck and happy hacking. I look forward to seeing your solution. Thanks.